The 2000s was the best decade for pop punk and emo, not just commercially, but creatively as well. It seemed like every band set themselves apart in some way. You had the classic rock-influenced horror punk theatrics of My Chemical Romance, the literate yet highly pop-oriented Fall Out Boy, and the quirky and slightly offbeat personality of someone like Say Anything. And a lot of these bands are well remembered because they stood out. The 2000s was a sea of pop punk and emo bands. And the ones that had the best music, style, personality, these are the ones that lasted the longest. But what about the ones that just couldn't compete? Where's the love for them?
Right here.
Hey dude, I love your band!
Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Trevor and I am eternally uncool. I make videos about music, music culture, and anything that interests me. But mostly music right now. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, then I highly recommend subscribing to the channel and watching the rest of this video. Pop punk and emo in the 2000s was full of bands that labels were trying to make the next big thing. By 2002, emo had exploded and every major label wanted the next Dashboard Confessional or My Chemical Romance or Paramore. And a lot of these bands varied from extremely talented to just mediocre. But there's also some bands that should have been bigger. Like objectively, they just should have been bigger. Now, these bands weren't as big picture focused as Fall Out Boy, or as suited for the world of pop like Panic at the Disco. But they were all special in their own ways. And I think they deserve more recognition. What I want to do today is take a look at 4 underrated pop punk and emo bands from the 2000s. I'm going to look at their careers, whether or not they made a big splash in the mainstream, essential albums, and what they're up to now.
If anything.
With all that being said, grab a drink, grab a snack, get comfortable, and let's get into the video.
Our name is Zela. We are currently unsigned, and the name of this song is Straight Ahead at the End of the Court.
If you spend any amount of time on the internet, specifically places like YouTube or TikTok, you've probably seen this viral clip.
I'm just excited to see my Lord and Savior Baphomet represented in such glorious Italian stone. I do hope his eyes gaze upon me, and that my allegiance is recognized. I don't know. Notice me, senpai! Notice me!
This is Onyx the Fortuitous, a shame-filled man-child, portrayed by actor, writer, filmmaker, Andrew Bowser. Andrew Bowser has had a pretty good career. He's actually been in the game since 2002. But I think the thing that really got him to where he is today is his music video work. Bowser has directed music videos for bands and artists like Butch Walker, The Hush Sound, and probably most notably for the Gym Class Hero song New Friend Request, which he also makes an appearance in.
With authority, I gallop all the way to Canada to see your face, but all I got is this power book and eye chat. Besides, I hit you all the time.
But not only did he direct music videos for all of these other great bands, but he did videos for his own great band, Zela.
I know it's worthy of a blood I sacrificed, and all the tears I cried tonight. Show me faith I dream about. As long as you're here, I'm strong.
There's not a lot of information on Zela, unfortunately. According to their last FM profile, they were formed in Crofton, Maryland in the early 2000s. Apparently they were like super independent, hella DIY. Respect. I don't even think they were on a label. But that didn't matter because they still got a fair amount of attention, being voted one of Alternative Press's top 10 unsigned bands in America.
Whether you're for me or against, whether you're with me in defense, it doesn't matter. Tell me it matters. Tell me it's hurting you as well.
They also never released a full album, but they did release 2 EPs. The Murder, Porn, and Fatherhood EP, great title, no notes, and the Embittered EP, both in 2005. The best way to describe their sound is just very straightforward emo, kind of soft post-hardcore. It was nothing groundbreaking or like ahead of its time, but it was still very good and really catchy.
Forget me, hey, forget me. I stood for something. Having all these convictions gets
Zela didn't have too long of a career. In 2007, they went on indefinite hiatus. Andrew Bowser moved to LA and directed more music videos, made some independent films, and created one of the best internet characters of all time.
Help! Help! My wiener's out! My wiener's out!
I couldn't find any information on what the other members of Zela are up to today. I mean, hopefully they're alright. If you like good emo music that fits the 2000s sound to a T, then definitely check out Zela. Not enough people know about this band.
Drag my corpse to the city. I never got to visit. Promise don't let me miss it. Promise don't let me miss it.
I've talked before about how much of my music taste was influenced by my older brother. He always knew the cool bands that always really intrigued me growing up. But the one that always stuck with me was Boys Night Out.
You and me, you know that we were always funny in a car crash sort of way.
Boys Night Out was formed in Burlington, Ontario, Canada in 2001 by vocalist Connor Lovett Fraser and guitarist Jeff Davis. The two started collaborating on songs and eventually brought in bassist Dave Costa, drummer Chris Danner, and guitarist Rob Pasalic. The lineup would change over the years, but this was the OG lineup. Their first release was an EP in 2001 called You Are My Canvas, released entirely independently.
And it's pretty good.
I mean, kinda rough, but not unlistenable. It's your typical early 2000s post-hardcore, melodic, screamo type of stuff.
Now I realize cowardness you kept me on your bloodshot eyes. That the brain was going bloodshot.
Their second EP, 2002's Broken Bones and Bloody Kisses, was released through the independent label One Day Savior. And this one sounds a little bit more polished. You could tell they were really improving and honing their sound. It still leans into the screamo and post-hardcore of its time, but the more melodic moments are really nice.
This is the sound of tooth against bone, against hearing crowds and broken homes.
After this, the band started getting a lot of buzz. Different labels were just chomping at the bit to sign them, and they would eventually sign to Ferret Records. On Ferret, they would release their debut album, Make Yourself Sick, in 2003. This album took a lot of influence from hardcore band Glass Eater and modern emo legends Taking Back Sunday to create a debut album that sounds wholly unique from any other post-hardcore band that was coming out at this time.
So just once, let's do something different. Yeah, if it's not too much. Just once, let's do something different. Yeah, if it's not too much.
This album would get a fair amount of praise, with AllMusic stating that they had so much potential for innovation. And I guess they took that to heart, because their second album would be so much more ambitious.
If I could just make them see that I don't need this. Talk to doctor, what am I here for? Can't you see that I don't need this place? I don't need these walls. I'm not threading up.
Trainwreck takes the band's emo and post-hardcore sound and mixes in elements of progressive rock and dream pop. It's a concept album about a man known only as the Patient, who murders his wife while having a nightmare, and follows themes of loneliness, guilt, and depression. Just a soft, fluffy story, you know, something to read the kids at night. By the end of 2007, Lovett Fraser was having trouble with his voice. And while on tour in Canada, their van broke down, and so they had to cancel the rest of those shows. And after that, they didn't really break up per se, but they just kind of stopped for a while. There were a few reunions in the late 2000s and early 2010s, but nothing really concrete or permanent. Lovett Fraser said in 2013, I'm sorry to say it, but I can't really see Boys Night Out getting back together for any shows. It seems that everyone is getting back together for reunion shows these days, but sadly, I don't think Boys Night Out will be counted among them.
Cut to 2024.
A new lineup of the band played at Furnace Fest. The reunion was done to honor the memory of Lovett Fraser's partner, Julia McIsaacs, who was unfortunately murdered in March of that year. And by 2025, the band was back to touring. They also announced plans to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Trainwreck. Overall, Boys Night Out is probably one of the most interesting post-hardcore bands of the 2000s. If you're a fan of bands like Thursday or Senses Fail, then this is definitely a band that you would be into.
I've set it up, everyone I need, and I just want you back. I miss you.
You know, I feel like before Paramore, there weren't a lot of female-fronted bands in pop-punk and emo. Sure, you had Avril Lavigne and the Distillers, but it was few and far between. These bands existed, don't get me wrong. There was a good amount of female-fronted bands in the scene at the time, but none of them were at that Paramore level, you know what I mean? And the one I always find myself coming back to is the Rocking Horse Winner.
At 1 a.m. I'm home while writing you. It's almost winter, but it's warmer than June.
The Rocking Horse Winner was formed in 1999 by guitarist Henry Olmino, bassist Geronimo Gomez, and drummer Matthew Crum. The three musicians had been playing music together in various bands since 1994. Most of these bands were melodic hardcore or emo, and one of the singers of one of these bands would be a young Chris Carrabba, who they hired to do vocals. Unfortunately, Chris Carrabba couldn't do vocals full-time for this band. At the time, he had scheduling conflicts with Further Seems Forever, who he was also fronting at the time. Fortunately, Crum would find a new vocalist in Jolie Lindholm, who did backing vocals for Carrabba's old band, Vacant Andes. The band's sound definitely veers into the more indie emo sound of the late 90s. Jolie Lindholm's vocals are really nice, kind of calming and ethereal in certain songs.
Every touch I melt into the snow. Can you feel
The Rocking Horse Winner never got super big. They're one of those bands that only like the true hardcore fans of 2000s pop punk and emo really care about. I got into them through an Equal Vision Records sampler CD, back when that was a thing. I really liked their style. Kinda classic emo meets indie pop with a little bit of post-hardcore thrown in there. If you're a fan of 2000s emo with an indie flair, and you're looking for more female-fronted bands of that era, look no further than the Rocking Horse Winner. In the early 2000s, pop punk and emo weren't the only genres getting attention. You had the scrams of bands like the Blood Brothers, the experimental rock of the Mars Volta, and you had the most interesting of probably any genre of the 2000s, Nintendo Core. Nintendo Core took the classic 8-bit sounds of classic Nintendo games and incorporated them into heavy metal, hardcore, post-hardcore. This style was pioneered by the group Horse the Band, followed by subsequent acts that took the genre to a whole nother level, like The Advantage, Mini Bosses, and Power Glove. There were a lot of bands lumped into this genre that I don't really think fit the criteria, but I think the most underrated and forgotten band that got stuck with this title was Karate High School. was formed in 2004 by vocalist, keyboardist, guitarist, bassist, producer, and just all-around karate master Paul McGuire. He took the name, as well as the band's whole vibe, from his love of cheesy B horror movies. Karate High School sound has been described as an aggressive blend of poppy punk, hyper post-hardcore, and 8-bit blips. Karate High School only existed for roughly 6 years, from 2004 to 2010. I don't think they were ever really that huge. I've never met anyone who was into them. But they're a fun band. Really nerdy and quirky. Think of Weezer, but in video game form. That's a terrible way of describing them. I'm not good at this. But if that sounds like your thing, then definitely check out Karate High School. Do you know any of these bands? Are there any other underrated bands of the 2000s you want me to talk about? Let me know in the comments. That's gonna do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, then I highly recommend smashing that like button and sharing this video with everyone you know. I am a small, independent content creator who does everything on his own. And I'm really trying to grow my channel, so every like, every comment, every share, any interaction with this video at all really helps me out a lot. I'm also trying to grow my Instagram, so if you want to follow me there, you can. But with all that being said, thank you for watching. As always, I'm Trevor. Stay uncool. And that's the end of the video. Goodbye.